This is Spare Time Repair, and this is a Pioneer PD-M6 from 1986. This is an early example of a multi-changer and uses a magazine cartridge that holds 6 discs at a time. I'm not the biggest fan of CD changers, but happily it also comes with an adapter cartridge for single disc play only. Either way, the discs need to be inserted label side down due to its inverted pickup that reads the data from above. I've never featured such a mechanism before, so I'm interested to see how it works. This unit was sent to me by a viewer who purchased it from Facebook Marketplace and duly replaced all the belts. He told me that initially it was working fine, but now skips on the early tracks of a disc and also has trouble reading the table of contents. Select one of the later tracks though and it's absolutely fine. The donor has already tried greasing the sled rails, so I'm intrigued to find out why the pickup is apparently getting stuck at the start. I'm wondering if there's something else obstructing the laser sled. Maybe stray cables? Well, it's definitely not stray cables, is it? Grease on the rail looks fine. I'm sure the donor said he replaced the belts, but this one looks pretty slack. Could be as simple as that. Well, I don't think we're going to be able to see much from above, but I'm going to try loading a disc. Does feel weird putting it in upside down. So the initial loading does nothing. You have to press play in order to move it underneath the pickup. Well, it's struggling to get started. It seems to be playing okay now, so I think it is just the very beginning of the track. But surely if this belt was just slack, it would have issues throughout the disc. And if I press stop, is there a bottom plate that's removable? No. It would just be nice to see it working properly, but I'm not sure that's going to be possible. Well, this gear is missing its split ring washer. It shouldn't just lift off like that. It does give us easy access to this belt, and yeah, that one definitely looks new. I'm putting this back because there's nothing wrong with it. Well, I didn't notice we've actually got another belt under here, so you must have changed that as well. But removing this one isn't that straightforward. Unless this piece here bends out of the way, well, actually it does. So I think that belt will slip off there. Well, okay, I can believe that is a new belt, but it seems too thick. I'm always saying my replacement belts aren't as thick as the originals, but in this case, I think thinner might be better. A thick belt just won't mould itself around the pulley as well. I don't have any replacements small enough, but I wonder if I double this one up, whether it will do the job, at least temporarily. Let's try it. It's weird having to push the tray closed yourself. I keep wanting to press this again to close it, but obviously that doesn't work. So will it play first time? Oh, no, I saw a little skip there. Still not right. Well, this is the problem. You buy a pack of generic belts with all different sizes, but these ones are about the smallest they give you. So while I'm definitely not endorsing this as a long-term solution, I'm going to try a loom band just to check my theory. And it's quite a bit smaller than the replacement belt, but should still work. This is probably going to be too stretchy. Let's try again with that loom band in place. Nope, it's not liking that. That's worse than it was before. Well, now I'm wondering whether the laser lens is clean. But if it wasn't, why would it be playing the later tracks okay? Well, somebody wrote to me recently and said that if you've got an original belt that's a bit too slack, you can always cut it and rejoin it with super glue. And that might sound barking mad, but I'm not so sure that it is. So I'm going to cut this thinner belt, reduce its size to something closer to this, and then stick it back together using a fresh blade. So I'm just going to cut it there. And cut it about here. And he said to use good quality super glue. I've only got this stuff, but it should work as an experiment. Super glue and rubber should fuse very well indeed. And obviously you only want the tiniest amount. Well, you wouldn't know to look at it, but will it hold together when it's stretched? And you might be thinking, well, that'll never hold. But super glue and rubber really do bond. I'm actually going to cut this off since I don't care about it. Okay, let's try that again. Well, at this point it played fine and I thought I'd resolved the problem, but it turned out to be a false dawn. Well, I do feel bad for the donor. I think he just got sold a bad belt kit. So I'm going to offer to send this back to him, I think. But not before I've done a bit more servicing. And I also want to get a better look at what's going on inside when it's playing. So for that I'm going to remove the front panel. I need to disconnect the linkage arm. And I need to snip this cable tie. Well, even with that front panel removed, we're not really going to be able to see what's going on because this cartridge has to be in place. So I think I'm going to remove the transport, but first I'll take off the front panel in preparation for cleaning. Well, to free it up properly, I'd have to snip all these cable ties as well. So it might be easier just to remove the screws as it is. Pretty lengthy. There you go, front panel's free. I do like the fact that the play and pause buttons are illuminated, little lens in the front, and this red LED at the end blinks when the remote control is used. And it did come with a remote control, so I can demonstrate that later. We've got 4 screws down the bottom. Well, everything's so tightly packed, I'm going to have to snip more cable ties. Well, I think this angle is the best one I can give you. Obviously I need to leave everything connected, so let's turn it on. And press play. Well, that wasn't very illuminating, was it? So this is obviously the clamp being operated from underneath with the disc puck here. If I press stop, well, obviously it's not going to work properly because it's propped up, but hopefully you get the idea. Everything is so sticky. This old grease has just gone really tacky, which isn't really helping matters. So I think I'm going to remove this altogether, disassemble it and re-grease it. So to do that, I'm going to disconnect the pickup and I'm going to have to snip all these ties. And it's free, and all this grease has just run onto the bottom plate, and it's not doing any good there, so I'm going to try and remove all of that. There, that's much better. None of that will affect performance, of course, but it makes me feel happier. So this gear on the left is responsible for ejecting the tray, and this gear on the right is moving the pickup down when the disc is in position. But at the risk of everything falling apart, I want to remove these side rails so that I can clean off all the grease. I just can't stress how sticky this is. That is just like treacle. I'm surprised it was working. And you can see they didn't skimp on it. Grease is all on the inside as well, so I just need to disassemble this as much as possible. You can see this kind of shallow staircase on the rails on the side, and that'll be one position for each disc. So we've got 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6 levels for when the multi-disc magazine is inserted. If I unwind this cable tidy, I think the whole transport will drop out. I need to remove this plate as well. You can see this sort of comb underneath where each of the magazine trays are being swung out. And now this should lift out. More gloopy grease down here. So I'm going to spend some time cleaning everything up. I think it's very plausible that this bad grease was causing an issue as well. I want to remove this pivoting piece as well, so that means removing this gear and this circlip. And I think lithium grease will be fine for this part. And since I'm missing the split ring washer for this gear, I'm just going to wrap a strand of copper around it. There was a little ball bearing in there. Well, I guess the ball bearing was sitting in here. I'd like to service this part properly just in case the donor didn't do it. I'm going to unscrew this to release the sled rail and then unclip the worm gear. Can unhook our belt again, slide the rail out, and then the pickup should lift out. Well, the lens seems to be in there securely, but it does look like the original glue. So given the issue that these Pioneer players have, I think it's worth adding some more. Can't do any harm. Just winding this gear out to clean it properly. And this black retaining piece has been melted in there. I assume that was done at the factory, but it looks like a bit of a bodge. So I can screw this back in. Since the lens is mounted upside down, it's unlikely to have collected much dust. Well, here's a discovery. The laser slides along this plastic piece here, and it's broken. So I wonder whether that break was causing it to get stuck as it tried to slide along. It's also kind of a gap. I mean, plastic does shrink over time, or some plastics do. I mean, you can see other examples of it. There's a crack here, crack here. So what I might do is cut it at this end where the laser's not going to go, clean up the break, butt it together, and then try to re-stick it. So I'm going to cut it as far towards the end as I can. Right, now it's off completely. I can clean this end up. I'll clean this piece up as well. And then I guess I should use more CA glue. And it's quite a delicate operation. Well, it's 1 o'clock, so I'm going to stop for lunch, give that some time to dry, and then we can put it all back together. Well, it's been about half an hour and this feels well stuck now. So now I can hook this back over. Well, in fact, in the home position, it's not actually running over the brake. You can see the brake here, but I still think the fact that that piece was flapping around could have been causing problems. Okay, some more new grease. Right, let's get these side panels back on. And this indentation here needs to couple with this pin here. These side pins also have to go in the staircases. I think those are in. If I get all this back together correctly first time, it'll be something close to a miracle. Well, just as I said that, I realised I'd forgotten to put the new grease in. Well, looks like this little channel in here needs to go over this metal post here, which means I shouldn't have put this gear on. Then this post here on the arm needs to go in here, and this post needs to locate in the staircase. And this needs to go behind this micro switch. So my little copper strand retainer needs to come off again. I mean, there's every chance I didn't need to do all this, but it's always more satisfying when you do. Right, so now this can go back on. That appears to be working okay. This grounding wire needs to go under this cable tidy. And now I can make a new retainer for this gear. Hopefully I can now persuade it to go back into position. I think I used the wrong screws. There were 4 screws on that black plate on the other side, and those were shorter. I think those should have gone in the bottom here. Let's try that again. Yes, that's better. Okay, I think that's everything, so put the cartridge back in. Uh-oh. Well, I must have done something wrong, because this cartridge will not slide in. I think the problem is that this part here isn't retracting fully, and that's because this part should be in this slot here. So I think I'm going to have to take this off again. There we go. It's still not staying in there. Maybe it needs a power cycle just to reset the mechanism. Will the cartridge stay inserted now? Yes. Well, I think we're nearly ready to reassemble, but first I need to clean up the front panel. And it didn't initially look too bad cosmetically. You can see all that dust accumulation on the top of the buttons. I thought this lens was all one piece, but there's actually two layers, and some water has got in between them, so I'm hoping that dries up okay. If not, I might have to prise this off. I've just disconnected this to make it easier to put back. So let's reunite the two sections. Feed this arm through and reconnect. Now I need some new cable ties. But I think that's more or less back to its original state. Well, here goes. You kidding me? It's not taking it in. I noticed that the disc wasn't even spinning up, so I wondered whether the lens was actually focusing, and it wasn't. And so I checked the coils, and they were okay. But I've just noticed a tear in the flat flex cable. Obviously this has got brittle over time. These are the connections for the coils, and those are the ones that have been destroyed. So I'm going to need to do a little bit of surgery. So I'm going to try the fiberglass pencil first of all. See if I can expose these contacts. Well, it's not really touching it. I'm going to try the fine sandpaper instead. Well, that took longer than I expected. This coating is pretty thick, but I have now exposed the copper on either side of that tear. I'm just going to add a bit of flux, change my tip to something finer. I'm just tinning up the traces so that I can lay in some copper wire. So I'm just going to solder these strands across the break. And I can't really film this process because I need to get in pretty close. That was very fiddly, but those strands are now in place, and I've checked continuity and that's all okay. I'm just going to protect that with some Captain tape. Here we go again for what feels like the 50th time. It's doing exactly the same as it was at the start. I don't appear to have solved anything. I put the original thicker belt back on just in case that made a difference, but it doesn't. I wonder whether the tracking gain is just off a bit. Not sure why it would only affect it at the beginning of the disc. This is just driving me crazy now, so I'm going to check all the capacitors. The only bit of good news is that at the far end of the player here, stuck to this vertical board, I found that missing split ring washer from here. I'm going to pop that back on, but I'm not going to call that a silver lining. I've spent the last 2 hours checking every single capacitor, and they're all fine. Incidentally, I think this is the DAC, a Sony 20152. At this point I was so frustrated that I turned off the camera and just tried anything I could think of. I ran through all the service manual adjustments, but those achieved nothing. I then tried oiling the disc turntable motor, something I would normally do as a matter of course when servicing a player, but for whatever reason I forgot earlier. I didn't think it would have any effect at all. But then I gave the machine another test. Well, believe it or not, oiling that motor seems to have solved the problem completely. I'm using a different test disc because Peter Gabriel has a slow fade in. It just works every time. If If I go back to track 1, the magazine works fine too. Let's try disc 4. Disc 2. And disc 6. So I'm not going to say that everything else I did was unnecessary, but I think I could have got here a little bit sooner. For the record, I still don't like CD changes. That clunky extra step to load a disc still feels like a barrier to me, and it's true of this machine even with the single disc adapter. Still, I've listened to it for several hours since oiling that motor, and I swear it hasn't skipped once. The problem with skipping issues is that they can be caused by so many different things that you sometimes need a bit of luck in finding the culprit. I'm not making excuses though. Oiling the motor should definitely have been done before checking capacitors, so that part at least was an unnecessary waste of effort. But why would an unlubricated motor only cause issues on track 1? Well, that's when the disc is spinning at its fastest, and dryness in the bearing will have the greatest impact then. At least, that's my theory. A big thanks to Peter for donating this player to me, and since it was ultimately a simple fix, I'm going to ask if he wants it back, because I think I've seen more than enough of it. But that's it for now. Thanks for watching, and I'll see you in the next one.